Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
He is Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall,
host of the Chris Stigall Show.
So let's bring in talk radio host Chris Stigall.
Also, his podcast is a must-listen every day. Chris Stigall Show podcast.
And host of the Chris Stigall Show.
Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
Please welcome Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
Hey there, thanks a lot for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. Glad to have you along today. Thanks a lot for giving this a 5-star review and a written review at Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you get an opportunity to do it, it's always helpful to the operation here. We're grateful that you do that and let other people know about the podcast. You have helped this thing grow by leaps and bounds with your support over the years. We're so thankful. And we also can't do it without your support of our sponsors. And the fact that we have great sponsors in the podcast means everything to the operation. So if you enjoy listening to the podcast, if you don't mind rating it, and if you don't mind supporting great sponsors like our title sponsor, John Ruhlman. John has been with us now for a few years, and he is absolutely the best when you're looking for the best prices and the best coverage in health insurance. usmedicalplan.com is his website. Now, all you need to do is set aside, let's call it a half an hour. Reach out, usmedicalplan.com, or call 877-410-4321 and tell them what you're paying right now and what you think about your coverage right now. Or maybe you have some questions. You're just not really happy with your current health insurance situation. They'll talk you through your options. And here's the thing. At U.S. Medical Plan, they know 100 different private health insurance companies. So they're going to get you the best possible price and never going to skimp on coverage. I know a lot of people think, well, if it's cheaper, it's not going to be as good a coverage. Not true. In fact, what you'll find when you work with U.S. Medical Plan is oftentimes you're paying more. You're paying much more than you should be for health insurance for not as great a coverage. 877-410-4321 or usmedicalplan.com. I'm here in Washington for a second day today. And in fact, I think a little later in the show, I'm going to be able to tell you about some future plans we have within the next days, as a matter of fact. You know, we're coming up on the 100 days of Trump, the first 100 days. And so we got a call, I guess late last week. And they said, hey, you know, Stigall, we're doing 100 days of Trump at the White House. We'd love for you guys to come and visit. And I said, well, sure, we'd be honored. And so packed our things, came here to D.C., and that's what we did yesterday. The reason I made it double super secret yesterday is because when these things are scheduled, what we find is they're fluid, and there's no, rhyme or reason to why something changes other than when you're talking about global leaders. Things happen quickly. And so we're never really sure until they happen that they're going to happen. And so yesterday, once we wrapped up this show, I beat it across town to the White House, where some colleagues of mine and I were gathered, and we got to sit down with some principals from the White House to talk about their first 100 days and their achievements. Lots of different perspectives. There wasn't enough time to get to everybody. They had quite a cavalcade of different guests coming through. We were able to speak with the boss of communications at the White House, as far as I'm concerned. Well, they wouldn't like me framing it that way. They'd say the boss is Donald Trump. And that's true. But, okay, second-tier boss, Karoline Leavitt, maybe the most brilliant communicator we've seen in modern politics, the White House press secretary. She sat down with us for a visit, which was great. We were one of the only media outlets that got to talk to her, and she's always fantastic. And this was pre-press briefing, Fassetti, so we got her before, and you could tell. It was interesting because she came into the room, sat down with us, and I said, how you doing? She said, well, I'm good, and she's kind of watching her watch because she knew she had a 1 o'clock press briefing. And that's what she said. I got a press briefing at 1. I said, oh, okay. I mean, you could, not unpleasant, I just mean you can tell she is dialed in, man. She is a surgeon, and she knows exactly, she's going to battle with these vipers every day, and you can see it on her face, like she's ready. Last time we met, it was much earlier in the morning. This time, she was just a couple of hours to showtime. She was ready, man. You're going to hear it.
I need to go to the Karoline Leavitt School of Communication. No, because I was thinking of that when you texted me. It's just like, oh, Caroline's like on with you right now. It's like she's got to be on the press briefing soon. Yeah. How do you do that? How do you put all that stuff together, do a full morning of media, then go battle those people in the press briefing room? Unbelievable. It's
a gift. It really, she's a gifted communicator. And so to have a conversation with people who aren't hostile to her, asking her, I'd like to think challenging questions she's got to have an answer to, but not hostile. And then knowing you're going to go into a hostile room in just a minute or two, which she did. But she brought some into the press briefing room, and what they've been doing, and this is one of these things, I don't want to ask, Because that's, that's like being asked, hey, do you mind if I can come to your party? I don't want a pity invite, Fast Eddie, okay? Like, I don't want to, hey, do you mind if could I get a... But Tim Pool was seated they're doing this in the White House briefing room now. They're giving a special seat to new media, outside media. And I think one of these days, we will find ourselves in that seat when the time comes. I want to play it cool, Ed, you know what I mean? I don't want to ask. That's cheap. I want to be asked.
I understand. Yes, that's the way to play it, Chris. All right, we're here at some point.
I won't lie. Tim and I were talking, and he said, I'm going to be doing the media seat thing today, there was a little pang of envy. I'll confess, it's something I'm struggling with, but there was a pang of envy, and I thought, I want that seat someday. But good for Tim. And the point is, really, I'm kidding a little bit, but the White House has been doing this strategically, whether you see it or not. It's usually in the middle of the day, so a lot of you may not be able to see the actual whole press briefing. But this is a new thing they're doing, is acknowledging who's in the seat, getting to ask the first question to kick it all off. In fact, here's a little of this from yesterday. Tim Pool. Now, Tim Pool, for people who may not know who he is, millions do. Tim's career got started he was a gamer, Ed. Fair to say? I think that's true. He used to play like video games online, and people would watch him. And then he started kind of talking about news and politics. Then he turned it into like a full-blown news politics show. And he's got an enormous, millions of people watch Tim Pool as he streams his show live every day. He wears the knit cap, like some people. And by the way, true to form, showed up in the knit cap, Ed. He didn't ditch the knit cap because he was coming to the White House, I want you to know.
Now, how did you feel about that? Because I saw some of the social media traffic on that, and some people were not happy with the way he was dressed going into that briefing room. What did you think?
Well, I was in a suit because that's just what I do, But I love Tim. Tim's a great guy. I think he's a talented guy, nice guy. I said, hey, Tim, let's snap a picture. And I did. I posted the photo of Tim and I. Maybe we'll put that up a little later on social media. And, there were some of you out there that got a little snarky and said, what, the guy couldn't put on a jacket? Well, I don't know. That's just, it's his calling card. He's got a bigger audience than I do, so they put him in the White House press briefing room anyway to give the first question of the day. Here's how that went. 16:39 to kick it off, Paulie.
Many of the news organizations that are represented in this room have marched in lockstep on false narratives, such as the Very Fine People hoax, the Covington smear, and now what's being called the Maryland Man hoax, where an MS-13 gang member adjudicated by 2 different judges, I believe, is just simply being referred to as a Maryland man over and over again. Now, in an effort from the White House to expand access to new companies, you've created this new media seat. So I'm wondering if you can comment on, following this expansion, you've had numerous outlets disparage the companies that you've had sit here, as well as the reporters. I'm wondering if you could comment on the unprofessional behavior, as well as elaborate if there's any plans to expand access to new companies.
Sure. Well, we certainly welcome diverse viewpoints in this room, which is one of the reasons we have you in here, and there's many new faces in this room in comparison to the previous administrations. We want to welcome all viewpoints into this room. We welcome unbiased journalists who really care about the truth and the facts and the accuracy, and you rightfully pointed out the Maryland Man story, which I, from this podium, when The Atlantic published it, on that very first day, I came to this podium and said, this is wrong. The press in this room have this story wrong, and we have seen more and more evidence come to the table that we have had all along. We were always right. The president was always on the right side of this issue to deport this illegal criminal from our community. And it is despicable to see the media continue to refer to this individual as someone who is just a peaceful man living his life in Maryland. This was and always has been an illegal criminal, an MS-13 gang member, and a designated foreign terrorist. And the administration maintains our position to deport these individuals from our community. So thank you for being here, Tim.
Great question from Tim Pool to kick it off. Just a fantastic point he brings up in front of all of them, by the way. You're going to hear my conversation with Karoline. It was just about half hour prior to that exchange with Tim. And we get into that press briefing room with more specificity because last week, as you remember, she brought in, this was while Fathead from Maryland, what's his name? The Senator Van Hollen. He went down there to El Salvador, or wanted to go. I can't remember what it was. But anyway, he was making all the news because he wanted to go to El Salvador or was in El Salvador. And at that same time, that same day, what does the White House decide to do and Karoline decide to do? They bring out the murdered woman from Maryland's mother, Patty Morin, and they stand her at the White House podium. And you'll hear Karoline. I asked her about that day because I could see it on her face. You can hear it in conversations when she talks about it. That was a profoundly important day. And what it did inside that room, those vipers, the traditional media that are constantly hostile, what it did to even them, how it disarmed even them. It was a really interesting conversation we had. You're also going to hear today one of our conversations in the room, not all of them, because we're coming up on 100 days, so we have some more. You know, Larry Elder and I next week are going to be doing a special at 8 p.m. Eastern, commemorating the first 100 days of the Trump administration, and we're going to bring you more content. I'm going to have some more to do. It's going to be a busy next few days, so you're going to want to stay close to not just this show, but the Salem News Channel. And Larry's show, too. We're going to talk about what's going on Capitol Hill as well, just as a hint. I'll have some work to do there to share with you next week as well. But at the White House yesterday specifically, 2 conversations I wanted you to hear that are coming up in today's show. Karoline Leavitt, one of them. The other is Kevin Hassett. Now, Kevin is the director of the National Economic Council director. This is the guy that gets in the room with Bessent, with Lutnick, with Navarro, and they sort things out. I have not talked with Hassett since Liberation Day. It was pre-Liberation Day, as a matter of fact. Smart guy. But I got down to the heart of the matter with him, and I said, you guys, Navarro, Bessent, Lutnick, you're all in the room together? He confirmed, yeah, we sit in the room together with the boss, Trump. I said, and so I asked him, all these stories that you've heard about the daylight between these guys, that they disagree, that they don't get along, I asked him what you should be thinking about your portfolio right now. What does he see about, in terms of the future of the economy? That's all on the way this morning. Plus lots and lots of heavy construction live here in the D.C. studio. That will continue, I'm thrilled to report, here on the Chris Stigall Show. Don't go anywhere.
5, 4, 23 seconds.
There's insanity in the control room tonight. You have insanity in my earpiece.
Clear.
Stop the hammering. Stop the hammering out there. Who's got a hammer? Where is it?
I don't know.
Where's the hammer?
You know what? For years, I have had fun making fun of MSNBC's Lawrence O'Donnell for that clip. And today, I can tell you, I'm living it, and I now have a little bit of empathy for him, Ed, and I apologize for all the years I have mocked Lawrence O'Donnell, because that outburst is how I feel, but I'm too good-natured to actually display it here. I won't do it, but it's how I feel. I now know exactly how Lawrence O'Donnell felt in that moment. That's what it sounds like in this studio this morning. We're here in the D.C. studios as opposed to my ordinary studio, so we came here to do some business at the White House yesterday. There's a floor below us, Ed, that's apparently undergoing some massive renovation. I don't know what it is exactly. I don't know what they're building, but I know that for the last 2 years, even before we launched this show, I was visiting this studio. And what I know is even before we launched this show a couple of years ago, they started doing this construction. They're still doing it today, and it is the loudest construction I've ever heard, and it's ongoing. They must be building a shuttle down there or something. I don't know what they're doing.
And the most amazing thing, Chris, is that I've seen whole apartment complexes go up since the time that I was last in the D.C. studio, and that was, January? It hasn't stopped.
The square footage of this building, it's a sizable building we're in. We're in Virginia, or across the river here in D.C., and it's, we're in a what do you want to say, it's a commercial corridor. I mean, there's lots of high-rise buildings. It's not uncommon that people would come into buildings, right, and remodel. Tenants move out, tenants move in. We're in a commercial high-rise. But whatever it is, it's a sizable square footage, a floor below the studio. Ed, it's been easily 2 calendar years. They've been, as I speak, there's a guy drilling, and it's been the same sound for 2 years, directly underneath our feet. It's like, I would love to, I don't know, would it be impolite to go down and just ask what they're doing just to see it, out of morbid curiosity?
Maybe we do a special on that, like a special Chris Stigall Show exclusive, where we take a camera down and say, all right, let's meet the guys that have been drilling for 2 years. and
so I'm talking with the team here in D.C. who are fantastic. and they're running the show every day. But because I'm in my studio at home, you don't hear this stuff except when I come visit. And so when you're sitting in the studio and I'm trying to talk to you about live stuff and sort through things, and there's a guy right underneath your feet going, hey, like I want you to, I don't know, like try to put together a grocery list today with somebody underneath you going, and see how you do. All right, never mind host a talk show for millions. So not complaining, just telling you that's what's going on at the moment. And these guys, I said to them before the show, I go, look, if it's not audible over the air, Ed, I'll be a soldier. I'll be a professional, and I'll ignore it. But the thing I have always made a pledge to you to do is, if it's something you can hear or see on the show, and I sit here like a dummy and act like you don't hear or see it, I think that just makes me look like a bigger jackass. So I'd rather just acknowledge the fact that there's heavy construction you can hear, if in fact you can hear it. And I think we've confirmed you can.
You can, Chris. So I think that this special is the way to go, team. Let's do a Geraldo's Vault type thing. Let's get a camera down there and find out what the heck's going on.
Give me Lawrence again, one more time, and then I'll shut up about it. Give me Lawrence one more time. This is what's in my head right now. Exactly this.
4, 23 seconds.
There's insanity in the control room tonight. You have insanity in my earpiece. Stop the hammering. Stop the hammering out there. Who's got a hammer? Where is it?
I don't know.
Where's the hammer?
And the thing is, the guys that are doing that, now I know what you might also be saying. Some of you might actually be saying to yourselves, well, Stigall, why don't you go down there and tell them, hey, you've got live programming, maybe can you wait, until the show's over or whatever. Here's the funny thing about that. Because we do this show so early, they think they're doing a courtesy to working people. They think, God bless them, they actually believe they've shown up early and overnight to do work while nobody's in this office building, and so they think they're going to be done for the day. They'll walk out of here and nobody will be bothered. They have no idea that right above them we're doing a live broadcast for millions. So, I don't know, maybe that's the strategy. Who knows? I'm glad you're here. I just wanted you to know what that noise is in the background, that is why it's happening, and we've decided to embrace it and have some fun with it, like the pros we are.
It's so good to be back with Kevin Hassett here at the White House. Mr. Hassett, you've been busy since I saw you last.
Yeah, I guess so.
Post-Liberation Day. Good morning.
Yeah, it's been really, Trump time seems like it's double Trump time right now, but it's a great joy to be here.
You walk into the belly of the beast, these Sunday shows with regularity now, and all of them are looking at market gyrations and, hyperventilating. How do you deal with people who look at the market day to day and say, 1,000-point slide here, 500 up there? What do you say to people that react violently every day to this stuff?
I think that, of course, markets are going to move up and down regardless of what a White House does. And in the end, I think that what a person should do is think about when all is said and done, when Americans have onshored their jobs and there's a lot more wage growth and artificial intelligence is making everything better, think a year from now, is the U.S. economy going to be way better or way worse? And it's obviously got to be way better.
Yeah.
And with a much stronger economy, there'll be stronger profit growth, stronger wage growth, and so markets will be fine. But what markets don't like in any administration is having to digest change. And President Trump is an agent of change who is voted in because Americans decided that the economy that Joe Biden handed us was a sick patient that needed some fixing. And so right now we're working with Congress to get a big tax bill through. We're deregulating like crazy. We're stopping the crazy DEI stuff everywhere that's taking away merit from the workforce, and we're changing trade policy. And all of those big changes are uncertainties for markets. So of course they're going to gyrate a little, but for the typical listener, the person who's got some money in equity markets, you should buy and hold. It's always the right strategy. And the reason is because a year from now, you just know things are going to be way better than they were a year ago.
That was my question. Peter Navarro once said he believes that by the end of this term, that is by 28, bank on it, the market will be at least 50,000. You agree?
I'm not going to make a market prediction, but what I can tell you is that President Trump gave us 3% GDP growth and $6,500 in the first 3 years of his term in increased real wages, adjusted for inflation. Real wages went down under Joe Biden, and I can tell you right now that we're going to have more than 3% growth over these 4 years and more than $6,500 in real wage growth. And so that the American persons listening right now, the ordinary folks that work hard every day, can be confident that their real welfare is going to go higher and higher. And so think about this in terms of the problems that you get when you listen to the fake news about what's going on in the economy, is they say, oh, what's going to happen to prices if you have a tariff? What's going to happen to prices? Well, when China entered the WTO, everybody told us that we'd be way better off because prices would go down. But in fact, real wages, which is your income adjusted for inflation, went down for 15 years in a row.
Yes.
And so what's happening is that they're thinking all about like the potential bad news about prices, which isn't going to be all that bad, and forgetting that if we have a big increase in labor supply, in labor demand, then wages are going to go way up, and they're going to go up way more than anything that happens to prices. And so people are going to be better off, and I'm highly confident that's true.
As you and I talked today, I don't know if you saw Vice President Vance's remarks in India this morning. I was struck by them because to me it was a loud and clear message to the nation. Hey, you got to work with us. We can do big things, but your neighbors, they don't mean any of us well. He didn't say that explicitly, but that was what I took away from it, particularly given what China said yesterday. Any nation that does business with the United States on trade is going to have to deal with us. What are we to take from China making that threat?
You know, I'm not going to talk about China right now because I think everybody wants the China situation to move forward.
Yeah.
And we'll see how that goes. Yeah. But the fact is that the incredible progress we've made with India, because President Trump, with his reciprocal tariffs, got them to the table, got them to start to treat American workers fairly, and open up products that could never be shipped to India before, like agricultural products. All of these things are being negotiated with the U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer, and what the Vice President reports is, again, with his leadership too, all the way over there in India, is that the progress is astonishing. And I think that if you're looking for something to really feel buoyant about, to celebrate, think about it this way. It's probably the case that historically, the country that had the least beneficial trade policy towards the U.S. on earth was India. They had trade barriers. You can't buy this, you can't buy that. They had 85% tariffs on motorcycles, on Harley Davidsons. I mean, they were wrong in almost every direction. And to think about it, that they're the first ones coming to the table, that's a sign of the power of President Trump's strategy.
That's huge. I did not know that. That's amazing. When you talk about this group of you, from Besant to Navarro to Lutnick to you, when you're all in the room, I know you must have divergent points of view on economics from time to time. When you leave the room, is there an agreement to disagree? Are you all on the same page? Are you free to speak your differences amongst one another? How do you communicate this when maybe you don't see eye to eye on everything?
Oh, I would say the job of the director of the National Economic Council, which is a little bit different than the others, is that our job is to help make sure that the president's other advisors and cabinet secretaries reach consensus, have a safe place where they can debate, and I'm meant to, as little as possible, intrude my own opinion into those debates, although I'll guide a little bit now and then. But the fact is the president has chosen astonishing people that are all really close friends of mine, the Treasury Secretary, the Commerce Secretary, Peter Navarro, and others, and Jameson Greer, and we get in a room and we decide, here's what we think we ought to do, and then we go in and talk to the president about it, and probably nobody exactly agrees, but almost always every single one of them through that whole set of disagreement disagrees with the president as well.
Yeah.
And so I think that those conversations we have in the Oval are amongst the most stimulating, thought-provoking, intellectually challenging meetings I've ever had in my life. And so the president doesn't want a bunch of yes men. You wonder, like, who is advising Joe Biden? Like, who even got to see him? Well, President Trump likes to have people. Everybody knows that Peter and I disagree on a lot of things, but we're very close friends. And the president wants us both in the room disagreeing because that's how he figures out what he wants to think.
That was my question. I think the press loves to try to find the daylight between you guys. When you talked, you leave a room, you all leave as friends. There's no animus, is what you're saying.
No, there is none. There is absolutely none. And it's for real. The way to think about it, I guess, is it's a complete, not a reasonable comparison. to people that go to war and in a foxhole together or something, because this is easy compared to the people who actually serve the country and put their lives on the line. But you're in the public eye. There's a lot of pressure. These decisions have to be made correctly by the president. So you've got to give him advice that's accurate and not misleading. And so it's a lot of pressure. And what it does is it builds a kind of camaraderie that will last a lifetime. And I can tell you that when Peter, very unjustly was put in jail, that I communicated with him to make sure he was okay as much as I could. You have to go through these. If you ever had to deal with a friend who was in prison, you have to go through this complicated prison communication process. But of course, I'll be there for Peter Navarro for the rest of his life, and he'll be there for me as well.
Scott Besson has taken to social media in the last couple of days to speak to people's financial literacy. That is, learn how to invest, learn how to make a buck. The country's been great to me. We need everybody to learn how to do this too. I thought it was sort of interesting. Is that a purposeful message? Because we don't hear that often from Washington. Hey, you, John and Jane Q, consumer and taxpayer, let's improve financial literacy. Let's help everybody. That's important to him?
Yes, it's very important to Scott, because a little bit of financial literacy can go a long way. There's been some academic work that shows that if people look up their credit score and then think about their credit score, and then think about things they can do to improve their credit score, those are all things that people listening right now can just do, with a little bit of searching on the internet. Then the folks who go through that process improve their lives permanently in a good way. Because once you think about, well, what can I do to have a better credit score? Then you're just starting to be financially literate in a way that serves you in many, many different ways. It's often surprising ways. So the effect of having people just go try to increase their credit score and thinking about how to do that is like a first step on the way to financial literacy, and there's a very strong positive effect on people's lives. And so the Treasury Secretary, it's a big issue for him because he really cares about improving people's lives.
He shared a statistic on the Tucker Carlson show that I heard. I know you know it. I was 88% of the market is owned by the top 10%. The next 12% owned by about 40% of us. And then the other 50% of the country, he said, are in debt. Those numbers sound right. I was a little floored by them, to be perfectly honest.
There are different ways to measure that, and so the way that those numbers are correct for people who are owning individual stocks or even mutual funds, but outside of their retirement accounts. But there are a lot of people that have equities in retirement accounts that would change those numbers a little bit.
So that's different.
That's
people
different,
that are investing.
yeah.
Okay, that's it.
But if you think about it, like having your money outside of your retirement account, having enough financial literacy to know, hey, I'm not just going to use my 401k the way that the plan director at my office says I should do. I'm actually going to think about, should I invest in equities with my out of retirement money as well? It's generally a good idea to have a really sound financial plan both in and out of retirement, because you might want to have to buy a house a few years from now, put your kids through college, right? And so all those investment decisions should happen in and outside retirement accounts. And I think that what Scott's basically talking about is that the outside retirement account money is really not invested wisely by Americans on average.
You've been gracious with your time. I'll ask you finally, on the big, beautiful bill, are you in the room for a lot of the discussions between Thune and Johnson and the Republicans?
That's right. Yeah,
You're in that
I'm part
room?
of the Big Six. So it's the Treasury Secretary and me and the Majority Leader and the Speaker and then the Chairman of the two relevant committees, Ways and Means and Finance. And we have a regular meeting about every 10 days to go over what we're doing. And in fact, my colleague to the right of me, who's over here, we just had a meeting with the Chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors to go over the tax plan so that the President would finalize the things he cares most about by the end of this week, so that when everybody gets back into town, that we put everything, all our chips on the table for what the President thinks should be in the bill. And we've been doing it all along, but now we've got scores and we got this and that decision to make, and we're getting ready for a big meeting this week to make that.
So to be
happen.
clear, on the issue of taxes specifically, you think you have a framework now?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
That's done. How about spending cuts?
Yeah, for sure.
Those
Absolutely.
are done too.
Well, I mean, there's done, and then there's done.
Yeah.
So what I mean is that the analysis has been done so that all the options can be presented accurately to the President, and he can make up his mind. But my first meeting with the President, when I came back into the White House right after the 20th, we talked about a sketch of what he wanted in the tax bill. He talked about it on the campaign trail all along. There's no mystery about what he wants in the tax bill. Things like, the 15% rate for domestic manufacturing, the no tax on tips, all of these things. But the point is going from no tax on tips to a proposal that specifically says how do you do that and how do you not turn it into like a way for people to commit tax fraud.
Yes.
All that work has now been done.
Wow. And on the cuts, the $1.5 trillion, the Senate says they're not so confident they can get there. House demands that and at least that. Are they close there?
They're gonna get a bill. They're gonna get a big, beautiful bill, and the President Trump is gonna make sure that they get it over the finish line.
And Memorial Day is the deadline for the president. Do you think they'll meet that?
I think the House will probably pass stuff pretty quickly, and then the Senate will do what the Senate does.
Okay.
And hopefully they'll meet the deadline of the president, and that's what we're all hoping for.
Boy, that's some big news here today. I feel like we broke a little something. At least I think so.
so.
Kevin Hassett, it's a real pleasure to catch up again.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
Glad to have you along this morning on the Chris Stigall Show. It is coming up on 7 o'clock in the East. We are in the East, as a matter of fact. We are in Washington, D.C. today, our nation's capital, for day 2 of the broadcast, because we were at the White House yesterday, and you just heard a conversation with the Director of National Economic Council of the United States, Kevin Hassett, there at the White House yesterday, with some interesting nuggets. I thought it notable. Ed, did you catch that he said the House has basically already agreed to the framework? He says the Senate will do what they do, he said, but as far as he's concerned, when I asked him about tax cuts and spending cuts, he said, done. Yep, agreed to a framework. It's being scored now. So this big, beautiful bill, it appears, is really, really close, at least from the House side. And here's some interesting news. We got a call yesterday, and Ed and I have been scrambling talking about this with the team. Congress now is back on. They want us back next week. They'd canceled this originally. So I think we've learned a little something here. If we stitch the Hassett interview that I just conducted with the news that the House now wants to talk to media next week. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that's the timing is right. Do you think Hassett brought the hammer down? Can you imagine? Do you think he said, "All right, guys, listen up"?
Here's what the boss wants.
Had that in him?
Yeah. I don't know if that's the way it went down. It sounds like he's one of the smarter guys in the room and told them, "Here's what the boss needs, and he needs it by Memorial Day. Let's get it done." I did think it interesting when he said the Senate's going to do what the Senate's going to do. So it sounds to me like Johnson and the House Republicans, believe it or not, may well be on their way to a meaningful, big, beautiful bill with the cuts in both spending and taxes that Trump wants. That's a significant bit of news if true, because I was getting worried hearing nothing, that there's nothing happening at all. And it turns out the silence is actually them, supposedly, apparently, if Hassett, and I have no reason to doubt Hassett, he says they're close. They're real close. And that Memorial Day is not unrealistic. But when he said the Senate's going to do what the Senate's going to do, Ed, that makes me a little nervous.
That was, as soon as he said that was a red flag. And another one for me was, well, there's done, and then there's done.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what's the second done? Is that the Senate? Is that what we're...
So here's the programming note. We got a call yesterday, and they said, hey, we want to celebrate the first 100 days of Trump on Capitol Hill. And I said, okay, what's that mean? Well, you come here, and let's have some conversations from Capitol Hill. I said, oh, okay, well, we'll do that. And so, what is that, Monday, Ed? Is that the plan now? Tuesday?
Yes, I believe so. Let me check. A lot of information.
Yeah, a lot of information. So we've got a live show with Larry Elder that we'll be doing a special on Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. And you can see that on the Salem News Channel. If you'd like to watch, I hope that you will. Larry and I are going to talk about the first 100 days. We're going to have a lot of great guests and commentary. Some of these interviews that I taped yesterday, and it looks like I'll probably be recording next week. We'll have some of those with Larry for the special as well. But we're coming back here to D.C. I don't know if the construction guys are still going to be here. I would guess they are. If I'm a betting man, the construction guys will still be with us. So we're going to go to Capitol Hill next week and talk with some members of the House about this big, beautiful bill. I don't know about the Senate, but I do know the House, and according to Hassett, they're close. So we'll bring you everything we possibly can. To me, it's always a privilege to go to the White House. Those guys aren't my concern, if I'm to be perfectly honest with you. I was grateful for the invitation yesterday. My worry is what's going on Capitol Hill. So the fact that they said come up here and join us tells me they do feel like they've got something to sell now. They've got something to tell you, the voting public, the taxpayers. And that also tells me then that they want to start shopping that out. It's never by accident when shows like this are invited to start talking to politicians. They want you to know something. And so here's what I'm stitching together. As of yesterday, there was no such invitation. I then say on the show, I'm dubious that the Congress is getting the big, beautiful bill done. They canceled their event. Later in that same day, we get a call, nope, the event is back on. And that's after Hassett tells us that the House is more or less done with a framework on it. So that tells me that when we come back on Monday, Ed, do we have a confirmation on that? Monday.
That is right. Yep.
All right. So we're going to Capitol Hill on Monday, and we're going to sit down with some members of the House, and that tells me that they're going to share with us that they do, in fact, have the framework of one big, beautiful bill. That then tells me that what they're trying to do is lean publicly on the Senate Republicans to get their butts in gear and sign on with what the House wants. $1 trillion in cuts at least. That seems to be one of the biggest sticking points, I'm told, from the United States Senate's perspective and the Republicans, is achieving that $1.5 trillion in cuts, which, as we talked yesterday on the show, Steve Moore, our chief economist, said that's a cakewalk. They can do that in their sleep if they want. He said the only reason Senate wouldn't want to do that is because they like to play Santa Claus just like big spending Democrats do. There's not much daylight between them on that issue, sadly. So that's what's happening. It's going to be a fast and furious next few days here. Back at home base for the show tomorrow, and then we're back in D.C. on Monday to talk to some folks on Capitol Hill to commemorate the 100 days. Tuesday is the show with Larry, and Wednesday is actually the official 100-day mark. We looked it up on the calendar. So there's a lot to do. I've got a lot more show to get to today, as a matter of fact. Still to come. We sat down yesterday with Karoline Leavitt just before her press briefing. It was a great conversation. You're going to want to hear it. And some Maha news we want to unpack as well.
There's probably never been a bigger focus on health right now. The Maha movement, with the focus on eating healthy for a change. Very good news for my sponsors and friends at Balance of Nature. We have it in our cabinet. Take it every day. Their method of producing vibrant nutritional supplements is second to none. You know, a lot of others use chemicals and additives. Balance of Nature is made solely from whole food. Other methods, they sacrifice nutritional quantity for the sake of profits and volume. But Balance of Nature, they have a very advanced vacuum cold process. So they freeze dry the fruits and the vegetables, and they retain 93% of their nutritional value. A lot of the other nutrients that you might see out there are lucky to salvage 30%. Balance of Nature packs a nutritional punch is the point. That's the whole reason we take Balance of Nature, and I think you ought to as well. You'll get the most nutrition for the sake of your health. And right now, if you use my name, Chris, as your discount code, you'll get 35% off, plus free shipping and the money-back guarantee. Call 800-2468-751. 800-2468-751. Use my name, Chris, as your promo code. You can also log on to balanceofnature.com and use the name Chris as your promo code. You'll get 35% off plus free shipping. Make America healthy again, you bet. It starts with Balance of Nature. Promo code Chris, balanceofnature.com.
Here we are, 2025. Happy New Year. And our friends at Gulag America are back and along for the ride. You know, they have been not only great sponsors, but they have been ride or die founders at the Harump Society. I am so appreciative for our friends at Gulag America. I love the work they do. And we have every reason to be optimistic in this new year. They are, we are, all of us are. America's resurgence, it's back. Trump's back. And Gulag America wants to continue to be your premier source for topical and satirical apparel and other gear designed to help give you voice for your love of liberty and your desire to see America great again. I know we all share that in common. Gulag America does too, but that doesn't mean that the deep state's not going to be busy at work. They're not going to go gently into the good night, as they say. So Gulag America is ready. They want you battle ready. They want you geared up, and they've got hilarious stuff for you to buy, and they're going to give it to you at a deep discount to kick off the new year. You ready for this? You take 15% off all orders at gulagamerica.com when you use my promo code Chris15. So if you go shopping today and you see a shirt you like, and you will because they're hilarious, go to gulagamerica.com, type the promo code Chris15. That's Chris15. Type it in the checkout, and then you'll save big. Enjoy the new year. Enjoy new savings with that same quality, that same hilarious attitude that you've come to expect from our buddies at Gulag America, where they say, it's not our wish, it is our warning. Glad to have you here this morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you're well. Live look at Miami, Florida on the Salem News Channel if you're watching. And if you're listening, I know you're listening in Miami and in great cities all over the country on this fantastic radio affiliate of ours. I'm grateful that you listen here. Thank you so much. You can always stay in touch with the show wherever you are, however you consume it. The Salem News Channel app. Click the Watch Live button right at the top of the app when you open it up, and you can listen to the show, take it along with you, watch it if you want. And, of course, always listen to it on our great radio stations and affiliates all over the country. Thank you so much for being here. I know that there are a lot of places that you could be at this hour of the day. There's a lot competing with us at this hour of the day and all day, every day. So, really, that you make this a destination, it means the world. And, as always, if you miss this show, if there's anything you want to catch up on, here again, maybe you missed an hour or whatever, catch the podcast every single day, and you can do it at chrisstigall.com, along with the Harumph Society, my 3 times a week newsletter. I will have some photos from my visit to the White House yesterday that I'd like to share with you at the Harumph Society, too. Always love to read your comments, and Harumphers are the very, very best. The community that has been built there in the comment section of the Harumph Society, you'll love. And it's my chance to kind of add some additional thoughts of the week. I comb through social media and kind of clip together stuff. It's sort of an aggregator site. That's sort of what I've developed it to be over the last couple of years, is sort of a way for those of you who are busy and would rather not sit and consume this stuff all day long like we have to. I try to put it together in a bite-sized way, take you 8 to 10 minutes on balance generally to just kind of refresh and read and get caught up on things so that you can go on about your day. We do it as a little bit of a public service in some ways, we hope. So, chrisstigall.com for that, and all the social media, too. Still to come, we're going to talk to Karoline Leavitt. We sat down with her yesterday at the White House, had a really fascinating conversation about what's on her mind, going through her head, and how the White House is communicating now. 100 days next week. Wednesday marks the 100th day of the Trump administration. We will be covering that extensively here, not just with the conversations from the White House yesterday, but we're also going to Capitol Hill next week, and we're going to talk with some House Republicans, as it sounds like they're inching closer to one big, beautiful bill. That would be very, very good news. Kevin Hassett sort of alluded to that in the last hour. If you missed that conversation, you can go catch it. But Karoline will be here to talk about that. We're also going to talk with Erin Maguire, who's a brilliant Republican strategist here in the D.C. area. She's going to join me here in studio. And I'm going to ask her, as we talk about Republicans and how they're doing, as everybody, thinks ahead, because politics, you have to think ahead, the midterms next year. What's that look like right now? From the post-millennial, interesting. In terms of Trump's approval specifically, who do you think disapproves age-wise? If you're talking about age and demographics, who do you think disapproves of Trump the most? Disapproves. I found this very, very interesting, and I think it is a companion story to what I was kind of scratching at yesterday as it relates to the economy. Who do you think is most concerned right now about the state of things, the economy? If your answer is those who are in their senior years or the baby boomer generation, you'd be right. And that's exactly tracking with this story from the post-millennial. When asked, do you approve or disapprove of the job Donald Trump is doing as president? Those of the president's own age group issued a resounding no. It turns out baby boomers are the ones who, and this is their words, not mine, hate Trump the most. I think hate's a little strong, but disapprove of his job performance. A new poll out from Real Clear Politics shows that the oldest voters are those who strongly disapprove of Trump. This is of 1,000 registered voters. Strongly disapprove of Trump. When asked, do you approve or disapprove of the job Donald Trump is doing as president, those of the president's own age group are the ones that were the most critical. The youngest, interestingly, ages 18 to 29, approved of Trump by 2 points. 30 to 39-year-olds approved of Trump by 9. The next batch of middle-aged Americans, Gen Xers if you want, ages 40 to 49, it's about a tie, approve, disapprove. 50 to 59-year-olds thought well of Trump by 3. 60 to 69-year-olds approve of Trump by 5. But it's the Americans over 70, writes the post-millennial. Their disapproval of Trump's performance as president has a 14-point spread. Now, Fast Eddie, why would that be? I think it's pretty obvious.
Yes, I mean, do Do they think that there will be cuts to Social Security and Medicare?
I think there's a bit of that, but I also think they're looking immediately at their expenses, their finances, and what they're living off of right now, their investments, and they've seen a loss. And when, as we talked yesterday, when you're 70 years old and you see a loss in your portfolio, that rocks your world far greater than when you're 40 and you see a loss in your portfolio. Make sense? I think it's pretty easy to understand. Younger generations have been veering conservative, they write, with the current demographic, the most conservative generation in 50 years. Studies have shown that those aged 18 to 24 are leaning conservative far more than generations ahead of them. March polling showed Trump's approval rating among his own generation taking a downward turn, despite the group having been integral in Trump gaining the White House in November to begin with. In part, this changing view is due to, you're correct, fears of losing Social Security. The Democrats are still doing this with great efficacy. Donald Trump has never one time said he's going to touch Social Security. And the Democrats continue year after year after year after year. When we try to talk about fiscal restraint and responsibility in this country, that we are careening toward insolvency, every time we have a national discussion about trying to control the country's finances, Democrats say, well, you know what Republicans are going to do? They're going to take your Social Security, Grandma. And Grandma believes it, and she starts to hyperventilate, and then a pollster comes along and says, what do you think of Trump's job approval? How are you feeling about him? I don't like it. I don't like that he's going to touch my Social Security. Even though he has said till he's blue in the face, he has no intention of doing any such thing. In fact, if people were somewhat reasonable about this, you would realize if you count on Social Security, you have to support what Donald Trump is doing right now. If you're counting, listen to me and listen close. If you are at a point in your life where you are counting on Social Security to keep you afloat and keep your energy costs paid for, and continue to pay for a place to have shelter, a roof over your head, buy your groceries, feed yourself. If you're scared, if you're older and you're scared that your Social Security check is going to go away, let me tell you what should really scare you. The insolvent track this country is on right now. Because I'll guarantee you, a faster way to lose your Social Security check and everybody else who collects Social Security is to continue the path that we are on. This country will run flat out of money. We just will. We'll become upside down. The country, the economy would just collapse if we continued this spending spree that we're on. And before you know it, the borrowed... And by the way, you know you're being paid borrowed money now, don't you? Those of you who count on Social Security... You know you're just being paid money. And you say, the hell I am. That's my money. Yeah, I get it. But calm down for a minute and listen to what I'm saying. The taxpayer money that you paid into correctly, you're right, you paid into Social Security, but it's been spent. We've gone over this before. I think most people get this in this audience. When we say it's a Ponzi scheme, it really is. And you say you count on this to survive the rest of your days, and I say to you, then you should really deeply care that this irresponsible body called Congress has blown every nickel that you spent your life paying into it. And now you need it, and you're drawing on it for survival until your grave, and you're scared you're going to lose it. And I say, then don't let Donald Trump's reforms scare you about losing it. Let Congress's reckless, continued unrestrained spending scare you. Let that scare you, because your check will stop coming if Congress does not reverse course. If spending cuts do not happen, if this government does not restrain itself, if the tax base across the board of all ages doesn't have their taxes lowered, people paying into the system, if we don't encourage more people and more revenue coming into the system and reduce our spending, let me tell you something. All due respect, those of you collecting and living off of Social Security, you should be far more frightened of that outcome than what Trump and Republicans are trying to do right now in reforming the system. But Democrats do this. You're going to lose your Social Security check. No, you're not. But you will if we don't fix things. It's so frustrating. And why are younger people more optimistic and pro-Trump? Because for the first time, they feel like they're hearing a guy that's saying, we're going to invest in the country and give you an opportunity. You're going to have a shot at growth. And all due respect, there are some of you, maybe even in this audience, of a certain age who are like, I got mine, I want to protect mine, that's all I'm thinking about. out of the other side of your mouth, you may say something like, I'm worried about the future of the country for my kids and grandkids. You cannot hold both points of view consistently. I want mine. I want to protect mine. Gimme, whatever it takes. I don't want to talk about anything else. And then say, but I'm very worried about the future of the country for my kids and grandkids. You cannot have it both ways. It is absolutely irreconcilable. The only way to protect what's yours, for you to keep getting that Social Security check and have something for your kids and grandkids, is to support the reforms and ignore these lying, filthy, scumbag Democrats who are threatening your existence if we so much as restrain ourselves spending a little bit, $1 trillion here or there, which is nothing to these wasteful idiots. Get smart. Don't be duped emotionally because you're of a certain age and you're counting on Social Security checks, okay? This is the Stigall Show. Glad to have you along on the Chris Stigall Show, this Wednesday edition. Our telephone number, 855-STIGALL, if you want to get in here. Listen, I just want to put a bow on this. The good news is Social Security and Medicare still have 10 years. That's the upside. That's not in debate. They still have 10 years to go. If Washington does the tough stuff, and this is tough, my point is, in the last segment, of course, people are not going to like tough decision-making. Of course, people are not going to like to hear the word cuts if it ends up goring their ox. Tough cuts will grow the economy, though. It has been proven every time it works. Everyone will get everything that is promised. The government has to be reduced. It must be reduced, and this is the tough stuff. It is hard. What Donald Trump is trying to do is hard. He's literally trying to re-engineer the disparity globally, in trade, and economically here at home. Democrats, of course, want total chaos. Trump is not the enemy here, folks. Trump's policies are not the enemy here. Trump doesn't give a rip about public opinion polls. He's not trying to wreck anything. He's doing very, very difficult stuff. He's lifting heavy stuff almost by himself, trying to save the country, save your Social Security, save my kids' future and your grandkids' future. He's trying to do it, but he's doing it almost alone. And all he gets regularly are these stupid public opinion polls that say, well, people of a certain age are really worried about their Social Security. It's like, well, to save the country, you've got to rein in government, just like we've got to rein in the courts. Democrats want the chaos. Democrats want sabotage. Democrats don't want anything to change. Donald Trump's here to save the country. I can't stress that enough. And I will say that the guys that he's hired to engineer the Maha movement are also here to save lives. This is big stuff these guys are doing. Our buddy Marty McCary, one of the great guys, the FDA commissioner now, joined Bhattacharya, who's over there at NIH, as well as Bobby Kennedy Jr. yesterday, and they talked about various food dyes and other things that they're going to try to eliminate from our food supply. Here's Marty McCary yesterday, cut 1647.
So today the FDA is taking the following steps. Number one, establishing a national standard and timeline for the food industry to transition from petroleum-based food dyes to natural alternatives. Number two, initiating a process to revoke authorization of synthetic food colorings, including those not in production, namely citrus red number 2 and orange B, within the coming weeks. Number three, taking steps to eliminate the remaining 6 synthetic dyes on the market from the U.S. food supply, specifically red dye number 40, yellow dye number 5, yellow dye number 6, blue dye number 1, blue dye number 2, and green dye number 3. By the end of next year.
And RFK Jr. had this to say in 1648.
Medications to treat our kids, and they get medicated, and that's the only solution. And, you know, I would point out that there is part of the etiology of these diseases is a kind of media malpractice. A mass psychosis that has our media not talking about this. And one of the possible reasons for that is the amount of money that's coming from the pharmaceutical companies into our media and from these food companies for the advertising.
Wow. This is hard. Do you hear me? What he's talking about is really big stuff. It's tough stuff. And he's exactly right. Money talks. Nobody doesn't understand that. Media doesn't want to talk about the thing. Look, we're blessed. We do not have, and I'm grateful for it. We don't have big pharma and big food spending money on this show. And if I were to be wholly honest with you, if a lot of our budget were built on big pharma and big food, I bet there would be a healthy discussion inside the halls of this show about, well, can we honestly talk about food dyes if the General Mills people are sponsoring a sizable part of the show? We'd have to have some discussions about our consciences and telling the truth. Thankfully, we don't have that problem here. We don't have to worry about that. We have a clean conscience, and we can tell you what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is telling you. These guys, they have nothing to gain here. They're going in guns a-blazing, tackling some of the most sacred cows in American politics and media to save lives and save the solvency of the country. It's hard work. We owe them patience and support. Glad to have you along on this midweek edition of the Stigall Show. Thanks a lot for watching on the Salem News Channel. If you don't have the app, snag it. Go to snc.tv. You can go to chrisstigall.com. But I would get that app because if you do that, then you can click Watch Live, and we pop right up on your phone. It's super easy to use. You can take it along and watch and listen wherever you go. You can also, of course, find the podcast every day at chrisstigall.com. And those of you listening on great radio stations all over the country, so glad to have you along here live this morning. 855-STIGALL is the telephone number if you want to get in here. Yesterday, and coming up in just a little bit, we're going to have a conversation. I went to the White House yesterday and talked with the White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, and I actually asked her to talk a little bit about what was yesterday. Prior to it getting underway, I asked her what she thought about heading into it. The Supreme Court is, at least according to the headline I read here today, the Supreme Court seems to be leaning towards supporting parents in a case before them revolving around Montgomery County, Maryland. Lunatic Central when it comes to educating kids. Maryland and Virginia have become just cesspools in public education. Public education not faring well just about anywhere. I saw Linda McMahon yesterday. I said, Secretary McMahon, it is a pleasure to meet you. It is an honor to meet the best and I hope last Department of Education Secretary. And she laughed. That's the goal. I mean, she was hired to put herself out of a job. I hope that control of public education returns to the states soon. It can't happen fast enough because we've gotten to a place where clearly parents are no longer in charge. Parents are no longer in control. School boards think they're in control, and no place is more evident than in Montgomery County, Maryland, and that's what the Supreme Court is weighing in on right now. To get more specific details, we go to Michael O'Neill. He's Vice President of Legal Affairs at Landmark Legal Foundation, landmarklegal.org. Michael, it's great to have you back, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, Chris. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you very much. This seems like a slam dunk no-brainer for people who value the autonomy of parents and the right for people to parent their children as they see fit.
Absolutely. This is, as you said, Chris, this is a case arising out of Montgomery County. Interestingly, yesterday, the justices touched on this a little bit, that Maryland actually has a history of religious freedom. If you look back into colonial era, Maryland was the first state or first colony that really hosted Catholics. And so there's a long tradition in Maryland, notwithstanding recent history and recent modern times, of religious freedom. So I think that's kind of an ironic point to make here. And this is a case, of course, arising out of Montgomery County, where the Montgomery County School Board essentially mandated that LGBTQ plus storybooks were integrated into the curriculum for young elementary school students. And when I'm talking about young elementary school students, I'm talking about first, second, and third graders, not just fourth and fifth and sixth graders when you might think about this, but these are an LGBTQ plus books that were to be integrated into the curriculum of the language arts, and that's your reading curriculum, up to 5 times, at least 5 times a year. And this is what came out yesterday in oral arguments, that these books were to be not just sitting in a classroom on a shelf. You know, if you think about your typical classroom, books are sitting on the shelf. No. This was beyond that. This was the teachers integrating this into the reading curriculum so that they were reading these stories and pushing these LGBTQ plus opinions and versions of the world and perspective onto young, very, very young children, incredibly impressionable children.
Yeah.
And what was really integral in this, and what made Montgomery County unique in this process, is there was no parental opt-out. And that was I think that was really critical for the court, and the court focused a lot on this yesterday, is the fact that parents didn't even have the control to opt out their children when these stories were going to be presented to them. And again, the plaintiffs, or the parties in this case, were a group of diverse religious parents. We're talking about Muslim, Catholic, and Ukrainian Orthodox. So a wide group of parents who had valid religious objections to the inculcation of their children into these perspectives.
Michael, I read this from MarylandMatters.org. When the books were introduced in 22 and 23 school year, the school system let parents who objected to the books opt their children out of classes that used the books, as they can opt children out of health education classes they find bothersome. But the board reversed itself in March of 23, saying students could not get out of the language arts classes using the books, which the schools called part of an inclusive curriculum that also helps teach civility and respect. Now, while I'm on that, I don't necessarily need your comment, but I do want to play for you something that Eva Longoria said yesterday. I think it was yesterday, and I had that a minute ago. I might have to dig for this for a minute. But anyway, she was referencing DEI specifically. Now I can't find it, darn it. Anyway, but... you have it. Okay, Paulie, could you roll this, please? Because I think this is instructive, actually.
Of a production company that believes in growing a pipeline of future talent in the entertainment industry. Good for you. Diversity inclusion initiatives are being stripped away, as we saw every day, from many places in the country right now. Yeah. So have you seen it happening in Hollywood, and how are you fighting against that with your production company?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's not just the media industry, but it's all industries. But I think we have to remember why DEI was created, and it was to correct historical exclusion.
That's right.
Which is not just about being Latino and Black. It's women. It's disabled. It's it's a lot
LGBTQ
of marginalized LGBTQ plus. It's a lot of marginalized communities that never get to tell their stories.
Right.
So correcting that historical exclusion, and then also
why do you think they're doing that? Why do you think they're doing that?
Well, I don't know, because it's bad business.
Yeah.
It's not just a moral imperative. Like, I do it because it's morally right. I want authentic storytelling. I want the people who have lived these stories to tell them. But we are creating programming for the most diverse audience ever in the history of the world.
Yes.
And so it's not just a moral imperative, it's just good business. And at the end of the day, I'm a businesswoman, so why wouldn't you want to create for the growing market, not the shrinking market?
And also, you can say it's going away. We're not going anywhere.
Right.
So we're going to keep making the movies we want to make and telling the stories. And listen, if you want to say it's not happening, we'll pat your hand and say, okay.
Moral imperative. The reason I share that with you, Michael O'Neill at Landmark Legal, is, when you hear students cannot opt out of language arts classes using these LGBTQ books, because the school calls it part of an inclusive curriculum that helps teach civility and respect. That attitude is born out of that arrogant nonsense you just heard those women on The View speaking, Michael. That's why I played that.
Right. Pure indoctrination.
Yes.
Exactly. Pure indoctrination. And I want to make one interesting point here. She's talking about business. I would ask her a simple question. Well, how did the Snow White movie do for Disney that was just released? Talking about business, okay. Oh, sure. Continue to go down that road. That it's good business to embrace these ideological extremes. And Disney, what they're poised to lose 150, $200 million on that debacle of a movie. So business, give me a break.
They have this attitude that their moral superiority and their moral sophistication should trounce a parent's right to tell the school, I don't want my child participating. And the school's response is, well, then you're a troglodyte. You're a knuckle-dragging moron, and you need us to tell you what you need to teach your kids. This is the prevailing attitude in most public education today, and college, by the way.
Absolutely. And I think this is a case of overreach. They're going to get away with it to some extent in the general curricula, in the general sexuality curriculum that they're going to inculcate in your public school system. Of course, you do have the opt-out provisions there. And what distinguishes this case here is the fact that Montgomery County really overreached. They said there's going to be no opt-out. Maybe if they'd had an opt-out, they would have gotten away with their crazy theories and integrating these books into little children. By the way, do you really, should third graders or second graders or first graders be exposed to this at all in public schools? Let's just talk about the basics. Let's just teach them to read stories. Let's just teach them math, normal arithmetic, just regular reading. This shouldn't be an issue for first and second and third graders, indoctrinating them into this radical ideology. It's absurd. That being said, if you're going to have the books there, you're going to have the books there, but you're overreaching. You're trying to, number one, integrate this into the reading curriculum. So that means reading these stories to the children 5 times a year. And then number two, not having an opt-out provision for parents who hold valid religious objections. Incidentally, Chris, this is another good case that's going to strengthen the religious liberty of the United States. This is the second case of this term. If you might remember, there was that Catholic Charities case that arose out of the Midwest regarding the revocation of a tax benefit for Catholic charities. I think the court is poised to rule in favor of Catholic charities in that case. I think the court, as you pointed out earlier, the court is poised to rule in favor of the parents in this case. These are going to be two strong cases coming down the pike in this term in the United States Supreme Court that are going to strengthen the religious liberties of Americans throughout the country.
We are in the middle of a lawfare era. We know that. Right. We know the American left has decided we can't win elections, so our only course of action is to lean on activist judges. Judge shop and find sympathetic political actors who happen to be in black robes. Mm-hmm. I don't mean to drag you into heavily political discussion here at Landmark Legal, Michael, but I would ask you broadly, does this concern you? Should Congress act here as an officer of the court yourself? Do you want to see Congress do something about these district judges that seem to be taking political activist roles?
Absolutely. I've reluctantly come to this position. I originally was proffering the opinion that I wanted to see the judiciary get its own house in order. I think the first step here is to say, hey, the United States Supreme Court, and incidentally, Chris, the Supreme Court is going to grapple with this issue on May 16th in the birthright citizenship case. They're going to actually, I think, address the specific, one of the issues is this universal injunction power of district courts. But of course, I reluctantly come to the position that I do think Congress needs to step up and play a larger role in this. Under our constitutional structure, as you know, the Congress is vested with the power to establish inferior courts, and they have statutory power to establish and limit the jurisdiction of these district courts. Keep in mind, these universal injunctions are a relatively new phenomenon. Just a couple of terms ago, you never saw presidents, even Bush II, subject to the degree and extent to which President Trump has been subject to this injunctive relief. So I do think there is a role for Congress to play here. Originally, I wanted to see the judiciary get its own house in order, have the Supreme Court speak with clarity on the particular issue. The court, unfortunately, is kind of dragging its feet on this, so I do think there is a role for Congress to play.
Do you think the Supreme Court is becoming problematic on this issue of, and I've got like 30 seconds, Michael, but this idea of we can't deport Trump said on Truth Social, we'd have to have 200 years worth of individual hearings to vet all of these illegals. Is he right?
Right. Certainly that decision last weekend was problematic, and I encourage everybody to take a look at Justice Alito's dissenting opinion when they certified that putative class for the number of Venezuelans who are being detained down in Texas and Louisiana, and they bypassed normal rules of procedure for the court. It seems like the court wants to move with alacrity to protect these individuals who are going to be deported anyway, whereas in other cases you can see them they won't move with such speed. So it is indeed, Chris, I think it's becoming problematic.
Michael, we'll always have you back. I love the work. Landmarklegal.org. If you need some legal counsel yourself and you're out there kind of shouldering the burden of it by yourself, Landmark Legal is a great resource. Landmarklegal.org. Thank you, Michael O'Neill.
Take care, Chris.
Little more on this yesterday in the White House press briefing. We have Karoline Leavitt, our conversation live from Washington, D.C. this morning here on the Chris Stigall Show. Karoline Leavitt, the press secretary at the White House. We sat down and spoke with her yesterday. We were invited and had a great day to commemorate the first 100 days of Donald Trump. We get into a lot of issues. That's coming up after the top of the hour. But later on in the afternoon, she was asked, Karoline was, a question, 1642 here, Paul. She was asked a question about the Supreme Court hearing this parental objection to schools forcing kids to participate in LGBTQ readings in the classroom. Little kids. Listen.
And then on the Supreme Court, I know the court is hearing a case dealing with parents who don't want their kids having to read gender ideology books in schools. Can you comment on that case and what the Trump administration hopes to see come from that?
Sure. We hope the Supreme Court will do the right thing, and the president has been very clear. He stands on the side of parental rights, and he believes strongly that parents should have a greater say in their children's education and the content, if you will, that children are being exposed to in our public school system.
Meanwhile, over at Fox yesterday, Martha McCallum talked with that lunatic Randy Weingarten. She heads the teachers union, one of the teachers unions out there. The American Federation of Teachers, I believe, is hers. And in 1656, things didn't go so well for Randy. Martha didn't care much at all for her tone. And this really, when you listen to this exchange, I want you to imagine a man. I want you to imagine a male voice speaking to Martha McCallum this way as you listen to the exchange between these two women.
Sweetheart, listen to me.
Please don't call me sweetheart.
It actually does. I'm sorry. My bad. It actually does matter.
Yeah. Sweetheart. Don't call me sweetheart. Eddie? Can you imagine a man telling Martha McCallum, hey, sweetheart, listen up?
No, not at all. No.
She doesn't doesn't do herself any favors here. 1655, they're discussing this very issue.
Do you believe, though, that there's an appropriate age to have a discussion? These are 4 to 6-year-olds, and they're being read, and this is out loud in the classroom, not just, oh, this is a book on the shelf in the library. If there's a particular child that, you might want to read this with, but, just as an example, my pronouns are like the weather. They change depending on how I feel, and that's okay because they're my words. Sometimes I use all the pronouns I can think of, just as one example here.
Let me put it this way. Go ahead, Martha, and I think that this will be shocking to you. These would not be the books I would be reading as a classroom teacher to kids who are 4 to 6 years old. Yeah. And I say this, I went through the New York City public school system. I was a teacher during when we had the big issue around Heather Has 2 Mommies. And I think when you don't actually make sure that things are age appropriate and we don't actually have sufficient conversations with teachers and parents in terms of how we accept differences, then you have situations like this right now.
Okay.
And
right.
so
this pit of hell stuff, look, if I believed her, if I trusted this woman, I'd say that's a refreshing point of view. Randy Weingarten saying, you know what? Actually, I don't think 4 and 6-year-olds need to be exposed to books about sexuality. I actually wouldn't support that, is what she said in that clip. But she goes on to talk about differing points of view, and that's why I played that Eva Longoria clip in the last segment for you. These people believe they are morally superior to you. They believe they have a duty to infect your children and come between you and your children. They have a moral imperative to get a hold of your kids and teach them that you are a backwards idiot if you believe in a creator. You're a backwards idiot if you believe in the law of God, the word of God. You're a backwoods hillbilly moron. And the smart, morally superior people are found in our public schools and in our public school classrooms. And don't you see, they have a unique and special bond with your child that you don't share. They're with your child 8 hours a day. They get to decide who he or she reads and hears. They get to decide if they want to keep a secret from mom and dad, if the child decides that he or she wants to become a different gender, as if that's even possible. This is happening with increased frequency. People that are coming out of these public education factories that want to go in to teach it. And this, again, I'm not speaking universally of everyone in public education. I say again, I feel I have to, the obligatory. My wife was a public school teacher. My mother was one for 30 years. My great-grandmother was a public school teacher. I was a public school kid. I'm not anti-public school teacher just for the sake of everybody being a public school teacher. I am telling you that the young people that are coming out of institutions to educate young people in this country are largely wild-eyed indoctrinators. And they believe they are on a crusade to get your children's minds right. And they believe they are duty-bound to rescue your kids from you if you don't share the point of view that if it feels good, do it. If you were born a certain gender, you can change that if you want. We've never seen a darkness coming for our children quite like we're seeing in modern American history today, 2025. It's unprecedented. It's why homeschooling is exploding. It's why Christian schools across the country are growing. Think of Montgomery County spending taxpayer dollars right now before the United States Supreme Court to hold the position we have the right, and we will fight hard for the right, to read literature to your children that you object to. We have the right to do it, and we're going to fight you all the way to the Supreme Court for that. That's how committed they are to this. Don't you ever doubt how deadly serious they are about getting a hold of your kids. It's been my pleasure and honor to talk about Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental in Broomall, just off the Blue Route, as my dentist and friend of over 12 years. But now he has two brand new associates, his daughter Alexa and Dr. Geddes. Tell them about him, Bob.
Yeah, Chris, I can't begin to express how proud I am, obviously, of having my daughter there. Also, Dr. Geddes is just a wonderful addition to our practice. He is a classmate of my daughter Alexa's at Temple Dental School, and I have known Jared for about 7 years now. Getting to know Jared over the years, it was my wife Debbie and my daughter Emily who kept telling me, you have to hire Jared. You have to hire Jared. He's going to be a superstar. Jared went off to USC, did a 1-year residency after his year at Temple, and he came back and he worked for about a year in practice in New Jersey. And after, again, my wife and daughter beating my brains in, I got the message and I hired Jared, and he's been a great addition to Williamsburg Dental.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com.
I want to welcome aboard the show our new sponsors at Texas Bullion Exchange. Great guys. If you go to buytexasgold.com, you will see my smiling mug right there at the top of the page. Since leaving the gold standard in 1971, the dollar has lost over 90% of its purchase power. Now, if you think about that, what used to cost $1 now takes $10 or more. That's pretty stunning. And if you think about gold, on the other hand, it's held strong. It's increased over 7,000%, as a matter of fact, in that very same window of time. So if you're holding a bunch of savings in cash, that's losing buying power by the day. Texas Bullion Exchange wants to help you diversify a portion of that wealth right now. Roll over maybe an existing part of your IRA or the entire thing into physical gold and silver. And right now, for every $1,000 you diversify in gold with Texas Bullion Exchange, you'll get a free ounce of silver. Claim that free silver and learn more. That website again is buytexasgold.com. Be sure and mention my name, Chris, when you reach out to them, buytexasgold.com. Here's their number, okay? 855-839-2728. At Texas Bullion Exchange, the focus is on helping you preserve what you've worked so hard to build. Protect that wealth. Keep it safe from inflation. Tangible assets like gold and silver, not paper promises. That's what they can do for you. BuyTexasGold.com or call 855-839-2728. Be sure you mention Chris when you give him a ring. Had a great day at the White House yesterday. Hey, welcome in on this Wednesday, just after 8 o'clock in the East, and we're so grateful you're listening on great Salem radio stations all over the country. We're grateful you're watching on the Salem News Channel, maybe on the app. Do you have the Salem News Channel app yet? Click Watch Live on that thing, and you can watch and take the show along with you wherever you go. And the podcast, always available too. Subscribe to the pod so you never miss a minute of this show. You can go back and review it too anytime you want. That's at chrisstigall.com, as well as the Harump Society. 3 times a week I do it. I got a new edition coming out today. Went to the White House yesterday. Got a chance to sit down and talk with the one and only White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt just before she took to the White House briefing podium for the day. Here's how that went.
Okay, Karoline, great to see you again.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Good to be with you. You had a busy week, and just the last week since we've talked, you had Patty Murrin with you at the White House press briefing, and I could tell on your face that day, and since what you posted on social media, that was a day that'll stick with you for a long time.
For sure. For the rest of my life. It was an emotionally heavy day. It was a very sad day. And I was so proud to stand next to Patty. As a mother, I cannot imagine walking in her shoes and feeling what she feels every day, the heartbreak and the anguish over the loss of her daughter, and to just stand beside her as she shared so eloquently the story of her daughter's life and her tragic death was something I will never forget. You know, they say sometimes you forget words, but you'll never forget how a person makes you feel. I will never forget how Patty Murrin not only made me feel, but the feeling in the briefing room was something I've never experienced. She left the press speechless.
I noticed
and that was a first.
I noticed that. And it seemed to me what was so impressive about her, not a scintilla of anger. Even though she's entitled to it, there was seemingly none. She had such a grace about her. And it was kind of a refreshing change from sort of the vicious pit viper den that you speak to in that room. It really, as you said, it defanged them.
Now, I don't want to speak for Patty, but I spent a lot of time with her before the briefing, and then after we had dinner together later that evening. And she's a woman of faith. And her faith is what leads her life, especially now, I think, in the wake of this tragedy that has happened to not just her, but her whole family. She has 5 grandchildren who no longer have a mother. And so I think she's a woman of God and a woman of faith, and that has helped her through some of that anger and hurt that she initially experienced. But she's using her voice for good, and she is changing the world. I told her that. You're changing the hearts and minds of people around the world with your words and your daughter's story, and God bless her for doing it.
It was not unnoticed at the very same time, and you made that point from the briefing room. You have a United States Senator in El Salvador. I think we all see it, and I think the polling suggests that the American people are not interested, and you've said it repeatedly, they're not interested in bringing this guy back.
No.
President Trump expressed on Truth Social, we can't have 200 years of individual trials. I know this White House is frustrated with the Supreme Court's recent decision. Can you speak to that?
Look, the Supreme Court, we are confident and hopeful will ultimately rule in the president's favor when it comes to the Alien Enemies Act and the deportations that this administration is trying to carry out, because the president is acting within his executive authority as the powers vested in him as president of the United States. And all we are trying to do is enforce our nation's immigration laws. And Abrego Garcia is a perfect case of that. This is a man who illegally entered our country in 2012. He was here illegally in Maryland for 7 years. In 2019, a court ordered his removal. 2 separate immigration judges in courts affirmed his gang affiliation. He has tattoos proving his gang affiliation to MS-13, which is one of the most vicious gangs on this planet. These are not the types of people the American public want in our country. And we have a nation, we need to be a nation of laws. So he was deported back to his country of origin, where the president there has said that's where he shall remain, because he is an El Salvadorian national with ties to this vicious gang. And he needs to be locked up, and that's where he is.
Are you, as a communications strategist and expert, I must confess, not that you're here to aid Democrats, but that they're dying on this hill when there are so many other things, frankly, we could be talking about as a country. Do you marvel at the fact that this is where they're camped out in messaging?
I said to our team, we're blessed with very ignorant opponents who have clearly no idea what the American public want. I mean, 89% of Americans in a recent CBS poll said that they support the deportation of all illegal immigrants who have committed crimes in our country. 89%. I mean, you can't get much more public support for a policy than deportations of legal criminals. That's what this administration is doing. So we are not going to waver. We are not going to cave. We are not going to apologize for doing what the American public want us to do and for enforcing our nation's immigration laws.
News yesterday, China said, I know Vice President Vance in India, as you and I speak. He gave a speech this morning before the Prime Minister and other government officials there in India. It seemed to me he was very clearly reaching out and making the case, hey guys, your neighbors, they don't mean us well, any of us. Do business with us. China's threatening other countries now over trade. Don't do business with the United States or else. What are we to make of China's threats?
Look, the United States is the best place in the world to do business, and the whole world knows it. They need what we have, which is the American consumer. They need our money. They need our market. The president knows that, and he is using the leverage of the United States and our economy and the American public to our own nation's advantage, to do what's right for the American worker and to cut fair and balanced trade deals, and I think you're going to be hearing about some of those very soon.
You see the Walmart executives, Target executives, I understand, at Home Depot executives are here to meet with the president today. The market movements, does this outside stuff, it doesn't seem to move the president. He seems pretty resolute. Are these outside market forces and the negative news around it eventually going to cause the president to back away from this?
The president knows exactly what he's doing. He is focusing on negotiating good trade deals for the American people and the American worker and American industry as well. And if companies want to evade these tariffs, there's a way to do it. Do your business in America. Make your product in America with American hands. You'll pay no tariff, and you'll have some of the lowest tax cuts in the world, tax rates in the world, once President Trump signs his tax cuts into law, which he's working hard with Congress to do. So that's always been the president's plan. Low taxes, low energy costs, less regulation, more prosperity and growth, and more money in the pockets of the American public, of small business owners, of workers, of CEOs, so they can hire more and pay more. We want to see wages increase. We saw all of this happen in his first term. It is possible with the economic formula that the president has implemented once, and he's working on doing it again. And look, as he said, there's going to be a period of transition. The previous administration ran our economy into the ground because they spent money like drunken sailors. So the president is working on rolling all of that back, slashing the wasteful regulations of the last administration. It takes time to do, but trust in Trump. That's why the American people elected him back to this office.
You mentioned Congress. They need that big, beautiful bill passed. We got to get it here to the president's desk. I know the White House is waiting on it. Are you feeling confident? Is the president feeling confident they can get there? The Senate seems like they don't, right now, they don't seem they can get to the cuts the House wants. How do you read it?
Look, we're going to let Capitol Hill and Congress do its thing. The president has a good relationship with Speaker Johnson, a great relationship as well with Senator Thune. And so we want Congress to get this done. The president's made it clear.
It's critical to the economic package overall that they get this done.
Absolutely.
Though. Has to happen.
Yes, the president's made it clear. One big, beautiful bill.
By Memorial Day is kind of what his ask was.
As soon as possible.
Let me also ask you about the fact that before the Supreme Court right now, Karoline, is this discussion about parents taking their kids out of LGBTQ activities in school. You have a baby, eventually he'll go into a school one day. Can you imagine not being able to withdraw your child from that kind of stuff?
Yeah, one would think parental rights should exist in this country. The president is strongly on the side of parents on this one.
And women, finally, I'll let you go on this question. Women in this country today, what would you have them know about this issue of Democrats dying on the Hill also, of men making the best women and competing against women and being in their private spaces?
I'm glad you brought it up. There was a fascinating article in the New York Times this morning about how the Biden administration, Joe Biden himself, agreed that men should not be in women's sports, but he pushed it anyway because the far left has completely captivated the Democrat Party. So you have a major party in this country that is pushing for men competing against women in biological sports. It makes no sense, and they know it. President Biden knew it, but he lacked the courage to actually say it or do something about it. President Trump has the courage to do what's right. He is making common sense common again, and he signed a very strong executive order to keep men out of women's sports, and we've actually sued the state of Maine for refusing to comply with that executive action. So we are not going to allow biological men to compete against females, not just compete, but threaten their safety on the playing field as well. This is a safety issue for women. It's a privacy issue as well. And I know that there are millions of women across the country who are cheering President Trump on in this fight.
You were always so generous with your time. It is great to catch up with you again, Karoline.
You too, Chris.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
That was our conversation yesterday at the White House with the one and only White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt. 855 Stigall is our telephone number, 855-784-4255. Moments after that conversation, she went right to the White House briefing room. We'll have more of that coming up in a little bit. From Politico and the Associated Press this morning, on the heels of that conversation, Democrat Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, you guys in Minnesota, you got a lunatic there, has announced a preemptive lawsuit against Donald Trump on that very issue. Yesterday, while Karoline Leavitt and I were talking, Keith Ellison has sought to block Donald Trump and his administration from acting against Minnesota in the way it's taking on Maine under a federal push to ban transgender athletes from girls' and women's sports. So Ellison wants in on the fight with Maine to keep men pretending to be women, to keep men in women and girls' sports and locker rooms and changing areas. Mentally deranged. You know, right now, the key is to instill confidence. And that's what people like Karoline Leavitt do. They instill confidence. People like Bobby Kennedy Jr. instill confidence. Marty McCary over at FDA instills confidence. Pete Hegseth
over at the Department of Defense instills confidence. And while all these nattering nabob Republicans on Capitol Hill and, of course, the punditocracy and the typical Democrat media, they all snipe and they attack, these people are staying strong. They're standing firm. They're standing resolute. Here's a little from Hegseth yesterday. He's been under perpetual attack. 1636. Take a listen.
At the beginning, it was left-wing reporters from The Atlantic who got a hold of it and then wanted to create a problem for the president. This is what it's all about, trying to get at President Trump and his agenda. Now, here at the Defense Department, because, Brian, I want this to be very clear, we take the classification of information very important. It's very significant to us that we safeguard it. And so when we had leaks, which we have had here, we did a serious leak investigation. And through that leak investigation, unfortunately, we found some folks that we believe were not holding to the protocols that we hold dear here at the Defense Department. Through that investigation, they have been moved on, and that investigation continues. As a result of that, everything we do here is above board, trying to make sure that we safeguard information. In this point, those folks who were leaking, who have been pushed out of the building, are now attempting to leak and sabotage the president's agenda and what we're doing. And that's unfortunate. It's not what I do. It's not how we operate. And so you've got another allegation being pushed again, not based on how we're operating around here. We're for the warfighters. We're for the president. And none of this is based in reality.
Yeah, Politico added again with this. Several top defense hawks who publicly backed Hegseth's confirmation are so far keeping quiet amidst the latest firestorm. There's no firestorm. Hegseth just laid it out. Karoline and the White House official response to this is, Hegseth's our guy. There is no daylight between us. They've been clear on that. They said it again yesterday. I told you about Pork Barrel Bacon, Representative Don Bacon of the Nebraska 2nd. That's where Offutt Air Force Base. He is the one-star general who retired Air Force general, whose congressional district, as I said, has Offutt in it, and I think probably he is hip deep. If I were to guess, just my guess, purely conjecture here, but if I were to guess, he is hip deep in government defense contracts somehow, in some form or fashion. Can't prove it, don't know that, just a funny little hunch that a general representing the district where Offutt, by the way, the only district in Nebraska that didn't go for Trump, and he's the only Republican mouthing off about how Hegseth has to step down. Listen to me. Pete Hegseth, RFK Jr., Donald Trump, Elon Musk, these people are radical, fundamental change agents to this town called Washington, D.C., where I sit today. They are a grave threat to the institutionalists and the people who are making money hand over fist while robbing you blind. And they know it. And it's why Democrats are now these chaos agents. Why? Think about it, really. When you think about it, and I was this morning, why would Democrats want domestic terrorists in this country here legally? Why would they fight for them to stay? Why would they firebomb electric cars that they used to celebrate and champion? Why? Why would they try to stop government waste and fraud and abuse? Why do they fight a bunch of grotesque sexualized agendas and gender-bending nonsense peddled to your kids in public school? Why are they willing to fight that all the way to the Supreme Court? And when you think about it, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, RFK Jr., all former Democrats now, going to war with not just, I'm sorry to say, their former Democrat Party, but also some Republicans who think the status quo is the better way forward than the fundamental change that we seek and that we need in this country. So Hegseth is hanging tough, and I'm glad to see it. Linda McMahon has written an editorial on the Wall Street Journal today. Karoline addressed this yesterday at the White House press briefing as well. President Biden never had the authority to forgive student loans across the board. For political gain, he dangled the carrot of loan forgiveness in front of young voters. And the Education Department has allowed students to rack up massive debts that are now long past due. If you're a student borrower with a federal loan balance and haven't been making payments, you must restart payments now. She writes an editorial about this today and explains and lays out the case why it has to happen.
Rubio is also making major changes at the State Department. There were massive firings and resignations at the EPA. It's all good. Nose to the grindstone, full speed ahead for the good people in the Trump administration. They're working diligently to do big stuff. They need our support. Beautiful looking shot of your nation's capital, which is where I sit today. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, thanks a lot for watching. SNC.TV. You can get the Salem News Channel app. Click Watch Live. It's easy. Take it with you wherever you go. We're here in Washington. We were invited to the White House yesterday. We had a great couple of conversations you just heard. We'll have more next week as we look forward to the 100th day of the Trump administration. We'll be back in D.C. next week, we just found out. Talking to members of the House GOP, and as they get a little closer to that one big beautiful bill, the White House is very positive about it. Are they? So we'll get their perspective too. But it's always great to be in D.C. to talk with folks in person that we don't always get to talk to in person, maybe over the phone from time to time. And one of them is a great friend of this show. She's been a great friend for a long while, and you probably see her all over TV. In fact, I was just asking her before we started the show segment here today, I said, are you like with anybody in particular? She says, nope, free agent. She pops up everywhere, which is why you see her everywhere, including here right now. Her name's Erin Maguire, Republican strategist. Welcome to the show, Erin.
Thank you, Chris. It's great to see you.
Great to have you in studio.
Welcome to the swamp.
I don't spend a whole lot of time here. This is like your livelihood. You're here every day, right?
Yes, I live here. I live right nearby.
And you appear all over the place. You go on CNN, you'll go on Fox, you'll go, and you'll take questions from just about anybody. People love having you because you're a straight shooter, but you're of good cheer about it. And I find good conservatives on balance, if they're good communicators, they are of good cheer. We're not angry. We're not motivated by rage. We don't have to be. We got the truth.
Well, that's right. And what a pivot from the Biden administration and how much they just lied to the American public, not only about the president's mental acuity, but about the economy, about the border, about geopolitics. And now there's just honesty and a bit of happiness. I mean, if you see that White House and you were just there,
yes,
these are really the definition of a happy warrior. They are having a good time in there because they know this is a limited clock on this part of the Trump administration. And they have to run hard and fast if they want to get everything done that the president promised the American people, which is a big policy platform.
And what I noticed too is they didn't, do it heavily in the first term, although there was some of it. This time it's like any of the media blips, any of the market gyrations, any of that external stuff that typically might move a White House to message differently. I notice none of that. There's a resolve there that is so obvious to me. You see that?
It's consistency and it's clarity. That's two things the American people have longed for decades. And now in this administration, you have a White House press secretary, Karoline Leavitt, who makes herself more than readily available to every member of the media. You have a team that is consistent on message at each level of the cabinet, in each agency, that at the end of the day, the focus is the American people and delivering for them. And what a wonderful change of events from protecting bureaucrats. What are Democrats doing in D.C.? They're chasing Elon Musk from agency to agency to try to protect bureaucratic jobs. They're yelling at everything that Donald Trump does, and they don't have a coherent message or a leader. So Republicans right now are on very strong footing in D.C.
Your livelihood has been helping candidates and campaigns message. As you watch, now just objectively, obviously I think we know your leanings politically, but just objectively as a communications expert, what are the Democrats doing?
Democrats have become very complacent. The easiest job in politics is to be a Democrat communicator. You don't have to carry water at all. In fact, you just give your press releases to reporters, and for the most part, they just run it as word. They've never had to pitch a story, chase a story, fight in a story, work for a headline, do anything that takes real tangible work to back it up, because the left-leaning legacy media for so long has carried it for them. And I was on a different interview this week, and they're like, well, the economy, we're seeing economic shifts right now because of the Trump tariff policy. Do you think that's going to hurt Republicans come midterms? Here's the difference. Right now, you see a little bit of the legacy media talking about the economy,
yes,
but they are continuing to do what Democrats do because they follow Democrats and Democrats follow them. They chase each squirrel that Donald Trump puts out and Elon Musk. So they have no consistent message. But I guarantee you that if Trump, and he is, as Scott Bessent has indicated, they're getting closer to a deal with China. If we get toward the midterms and that deal's not done, you will see nothing but breathless coverage about the economy because Democrats won't have to carry the message anymore. The media will do it for them.
That's brilliant, and why we have you here. Erin Maguire is in studio with us here in Washington, D.C. Thanks for listening on great radio stations all over the country, too. I should mention those of you that are listening in. Erin, you having firsthand knowledge of how to communicate at that level, when you're talking to people who are looking at their 401ks, specifically seniors. I shared a poll earlier that says the boomer crowd, 70 plus, they're the least happy with this administration right now, and it's largely because they're being told yet again their Social Security checks are being threatened.
It's the old adage, right? Granny off the cliff, that Republicans don't care. And I can understand that there's hesitation in that boomer 70 plus crowd. They are looking at their 401ks more closely. They are closer to a retirement age. But they also know that this is a long-term strategy. Yep. You shouldn't look at your 401k every day. You will drive yourself absolutely insane because the markets move, and that's why you plan ahead when it comes to retirement and making sure this happens. But this is also a difference between the Trump administration and any administration before them. They're being honest with the American people. We have to rock the world economically to get fair footing and make sure that your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids not only have the economic opportunity, but the level playing field the United States should be on geopolitically and globally. Being the next generation, short term, at least the Trump administration is honest about this, short-term pain, long-term gain.
That's what I think is unique. I've never heard someone say this is tough, it's heavy lifting, and this is going to be uncomfortable for a minute, but stick with us. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody say that in politics.
Yeah, well, politicians aren't known for being honest or forthright. They want to give you fun, easy spin.
Promising you up front this is going to be hard.
Yes.
Most politicians want to say this is going to be easy and we don't need to do anything. Kick back and relax. Trump is saying this will be rocky, but be cool.
Right, that's exactly right, and that's the difference. That's the difference in the messaging right now. It's the consistency, the clarity, and the honesty.
Yes.
And the legacy media wants to stand there and try to rewrite history about what they knew about Joe Biden, when they knew it about Joe Biden. But in the moment, the president has a White House traveling press corps with him. He has reporters with him all the time so that they can put out color from the day. They send out press reports they represent all the outlets, you know this, that represent all the outlets that can't come with the president because there's just not enough space on any given trip. And so they send out little colorful notes about what's happened in meetings and in the room and throughout the day. And you're telling me that all of these reporters in Washington, D.C., who regularly traveled with Joe Biden as president, none of them saw anything. None of them put any of that color into a White House, correspondence note that went out to the full pool, that went out to reporters all across the globe. None of them saw that? No. They all knew. They all covered up. And now they're trying to rewrite history because they know they lied to the American people, and now the American people aren't being lied to.
Aaron, there was a blitz. I mean, you can just say nothing more than a full-blown information blitz in these first 3 months or so, this first quarter of the Trump administration. I get the sense, I don't know that you can keep that pace for 4 years, maybe not even a full year. It seems it's dialed back a little bit. Institutional change is hard. They were doing a lot fast. Doge, there's word today, Elon Musk. We already knew he was leaving at the end of May, but the stories today is that he's already kind of backing away. Tesla, he's really taking it on the chin because of the way the left is behaving, and they say he's concerned about that. Is the press, I asked this question yesterday, are they catching up? Is the White House slowing down a little bit, or is that just my perception?
I don't think they're catching up because they're still so fixated. I saw a headline at Chiron on TV yesterday that said that Elon had only found $151 billion. Only $151 billion. What does the United States spend every year? Trillions of dollars?
Yeah.
And that's maybe a tenth of that? And that's not enough money for them to feel that was a success? I would ask any viewer if they would take $1 billion and feel good about their lives, or $1 million. This is real money, and it's your taxpayer money. It's our money. It's the money that while you're sitting and earning your paycheck, wherever you work, that the government puts its little hand in every time and says, that's mine, I decide how we're going to use that. And $151 billion of those just isn't enough to consider success for the legacy media.
That brings me to Congress, and I'm going to hold you over for another segment since I've got you here.
Yeah,
I love this that you're in studio. The One Big Beautiful Bill, talked with Kevin Hassett yesterday at the White House. They seem very confident they're close with the House, but then his answer about the Senate was they'll do what they do. What do you think is going on there?
Having worked in both House and Senate leadership, I can tell you exactly what's going on there. These are two siblings that will never agree. You can never send a House bill to the Senate and ever expect the Senate to just take it as it is. And you would never expect a Senate bill to go to the House and ever be accepted as it is. They all have their prerogatives, their priorities, and really the prestige that comes with being an elected member, unless they cede it to the other side of the other side of the rotunda. They would never do that. The House seems keen on this one bill. And what does this mean? It means that right now there are two budgetary options that exist legislatively that will allow for an easier process in the Senate, which is called the Byrd Rule and the Byrd Bath. It has to be budgetary impact to hit a simple majority threshold. It's how we get things done, like the tax cuts. The really big, hard policy positions, you do it through the budget reconciliation process. We have two budget bills available. That's two huge opportunities to make massive economic policy in the United States. The one big beautiful bill is trying to roll the tax cuts and everything into one piece of legislation. I would argue for the White House, yes, if you can get it all done in one, do it. That is never how it works in Congress. It's very hard to keep it in one bill. Yeah. You have two powerful options here. Be okay with accepting the opportunity to use both.
Senate is not as inclined to cut aggressively like the House wants. Why is that? Why is that a hard thing for Senate Republicans to get to, $1.5 trillion?
Yes, the senators just act differently than they do than House members. They have the 6-year terms, and and the appropriators in the Senate, the Cardinals, those that are part of the inside group when it comes to appropriations, they do not like to make cuts on either side of the aisle. They are much more steadfast in spending. I mean, if you look back at the senator from Alabama previously, I can see his face. He was very big. He was an appropriator, and that's why they're building all these ships in Alabama, right? When you're an appropriator, you're able to...
Shelby?
Yes, Shelby. Oh, gosh, I could see his face. Way to go. Yep. That came out of the back of the brain. But, that's why. It's because he was an appropriator. He was able to protect his own and make sure that those ships were built in Alabama there. So it's just the mentality between the two chambers. No senator would want to be a House member because they're able to maintain this much power.
And that brings me to, and I'll ask you when we get back, because you see polls, you know what the public's all about. And while I told you that it seems a lot of people of a certain age are nervous about Social Security, I think the public still understands we're in a $36 trillion hole that we've got to fix. Nobody likes Congress. People generally seem to like their congressman. So I've always wondered politically, and you know better than anybody, how one messages this back home to their respective states and how their voters are receiving it. So when we get back, I want to talk to you more about that, and also the MAHA movement, which I'm fascinated with. I don't know that I've ever heard public policy on health being talked about this aggressively like we are now, too. So we'll do more with Erin Maguire, a Republican strategist, great friend of the show, here from Washington, D.C., when we return on the Salem News Channel. Our telephone number, 855-784-4255. That's 855-STIGALL if you want to get in today. Don't forget, a new edition of the Harump Society out today in your email box. If you haven't signed up yet, I hope you will. Go to chrisstigall.com and get signed up. Quick break. Back in a flash. Back live here in Washington, D.C., on set with my friend Erin Maguire. She is a Republican strategist, brilliant lady. You see her often, I'm sure, if you watch cable news with any regularity. We're grateful to have her in studio. It's rare we get here to D.C. We'll be back here, as it turns out, next week to talk with the House about their one big, beautiful bill. Sounds like they're close there. You and I were just talking during the break about the politics of it, though. And I wanted to know, is the public, do you think, as you read polls, is the public paying close attention to this being a critical component to Donald Trump's economic agenda? The tariffs are the ones that are getting all the attention. But if this tax cut, if this spending cut doesn't happen as aggressively as the administration wants, isn't that a key component? And do voters understand that, do you think?
It is a key component. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that was passed in 2017 under Donald Trump gave most Americans a massive tax cut, no matter what the New York Times told you. Yeah. So this is a key component, and it's set to sunset. A lot of those provisions, a lot of how Congress gets these bills done is just by putting timetables on everything to try to make the money work so things can pass, and that's where we're at. It is a key component. But the crown jewel in all of this, I would see, is the China deal. If they are able to get a trade deal and a tariff deal with China, the rest of this is going to fall in place. Right now, public polling, all polling is just a snapshot in time. Where are we? And the president is slipping a bit in the economy with independents and with older voters. There's still plenty of time to make that back. And with Democrats so lost as a party with an identity and without a message right now, they will not be able to successfully message against Republicans when the economy begins to go the direction the Trump administration wants it. And they're not laying the groundwork now to be able to message that either.
I don't know. I mean, it blows my mind. I mean, not that I want to help Democrats, but it blows my mind that here sits this economic tumult, and it is. I mean, you mentioned it. It's just obvious. People are looking at their 401ks right now and feeling skittish. The market's skittish. That seems like such low-hanging fruit for Democrats, and yet what they're doing is spending their time fighting LGBTQ books before the Supreme Court and defending illegal alien gang members in El Salvador. Like, it's bananas, Erin.
Yes, and yes, where are Democrats' priorities right now, right? They're in El Salvador. They are for anywhere other than the American people. They're for Harvard University, but not the Jewish students of Harvard.
Right.
They are for everybody that isn't the American people, and it's shocking to see this. But it's not surprising, because the Democrat Party, to put it kindly, is in disarray, and their vice chair, David Hogg, is now saying he's going to raise $20 million to primary sitting Democrat incumbents. That is insanity. You have the arsonist in the House looking at the fire department going, what happened here? How could anybody have done this? The Democrats don't know where they're going. Republicans have the opportunity to define them now. And I think that's where Republicans are probably lacking the most right now in D.C.
Yes.
Democrats are lost. We have the opportunity to find them. Let's do it.
That is so huge. I don't know that we have to accept this notion that by next year in midterms, Republicans lose control of Congress.
Right.
Do you accept that?
No, because we've seen it before. When Kevin McCarthy was majority leader, Republicans beat back the tides of incumbency and history to gain seats in the House, which ultimately helped flip it to the majority in 2 short years later. It is possible to pick up seats in a midterm as Republicans and continue to charge forward. It's harder to hold seats, and it's hard to hold a majority, especially this small of a margin. However, it's not impossible.
If you were a betting person right now, I mean, it's an eternity from now to November, but if you were to bet on it right now, do you think Republicans could hold control for Trump's entire term?
No.
You don't?
I don't. And I think that that's because of historical standards, historical norms. And I think that while Democrats are a mess, Republicans holding on and being able to beat back the tide of history to hold both chambers would be difficult. I see us holding the Senate. The House is always the tougher fight. Mm-hmm. The Senate map looks better for Republicans going into the next cycle anyways, so the opportunity to lose seats there is much less. There's more opportunity to grow there than there is to lose.
So if you're advising House Republicans, isn't now more than ever an important time to show we've got some stuff to show for what we've done here? I mean, we've proofs in the pudding, right? Don't they need to be able to go home and say, hey, here's what we did with the Trump agenda?
Yes, having worked in both actually the Senate conference before and in House leadership, when members go home, they need to be fed everything that they can bring back to their constituents. What legislation are we doing? This week coming up in the House, they are doing a lot of what are called Congressional Review Acts, where rules that were made under the Biden administration's bureaucracy before, because we're still within the timetable of those, we are able to do a vote and overturn those rules to help people. A lot of work is being done this week in California specifically. New York and California are majority maker states when it comes to the House of Representatives, just based on the number of seats that are available in play there. California, they're looking at EV mandates this week, rolling back those. They're looking at the gasoline car mandates when it comes to California. There's real messaging about Gavin Newsom and the tyranny of California coupled with the Biden administration that they can be talking about in California. It's all there. You just got to get your bits and pieces and lean in.
Interestingly, a Hill headline today from Newsom, I don't know what the party is. And another one from the Hill, Democrats wonder if Abrego Garcia case is a political fight worth having. So it sounds like there's some fracturing finally, Erin. Before we close, just about 30 seconds, can you tell me about the MAHA movement? Is that important? It seems like women specifically really hear RFK Jr.
MAHA is very big, and I have a lot of conservative friends who have children, and they say as soon as you have a kid, your whole ethos changes. You get radicalized. You realize what's in the formula, what you're being forced to feed your child, what's in the food down the road, and these artificial dyes. Democrats are so lost. I bet you they will be defining artificial dyes in food soon because they hate Donald Trump so much.
Erin, this is fun. We're going to be back next week to talk with some members of Congress. I hope you can come back.
I would love it.
Erin Maguire is a great Republican strategist and friend of the show. We appreciate your time. So that's a wrap for another Chris Stigall Show podcast. Thanks for committing to it, listening to it all the way through.
You're a fighter. I like that about you. Hope you'll leave it a 5-star review and a written review. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We'll see you next time here on the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.